Welcome to the Khyber Pass podcast. I am your host, Paul Metzger, bringing you interviews with improvisers who have played at the Khyber Pass Cafe Thursday night music series. These are improvisers. We try to present the deepest cats we can. Bring them to a live setting and record an interview with one of the musicians each week. This week, Jamal Moore out of Baltimore. We cover a bit of his history and what he brings to his instrument, mainly saxophone, but most of the other wind instruments as well, flutes, recorder, clarinet, and the like. So we have an interview with him coming up in just a moment. I'll also have a short clip from their performance. And this podcast, as always, is brought to you by the Khyber Pass Cafe, offering authentic food from Afghanistan. Okay, it's a tour of the sizzling kebabs and piquant chutneys of Afghan cuisine. So, without further hesitation, let's roll right into a sample of what was happening in concert, which was Jamal Moore, Davu Seru, and Monkwe Ndozi.
Where you started with what I understand you were hearing Coltrane and Ornette Coleman albums at home through your pops, or was that?
That's funny. I don't recall putting the downbeat, but that is some of the backline. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, coming up in the the Black Arts movement and hearing a lot of that material from that period, and family was avid jazz collectors and admirers of the music. Um, Also musicians as well, and
You're saying inside your family, like you.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Parents were musicians. Father was percussionist.
Yeah.
Mother did piano, violin. Yeah, but they didn't go that direction of becoming a full-time professional musician. They took other paths of careers. Becoming a business entrepreneur and HVAC technician and nursing, things of that sort.
Dig.
Yeah, and so from that being enculturated in that environment and hearing all that different cultural context of the music,
Yeah.
I'm around it, surrounded by it, and then
Yeah.
dealing with the local musicians that are there. I mean, we have like every major city has its own epicenter or cultural connection via a drum circle or a music scene,
Hmm.
different things like that. In Baltimore, we have a collective called a Park Vibe, which can encompass drummers, percussionists, horn players, all kinds of instrumentalists, and it's historically been running for almost about 45 years now. And this is one of the known drum circles in Baltimore. Every artist come through there. Every major artist has come through there, major and minor, and we have 4 or 5 generations of people coming through there, through that circle right there. And so, with that right there, that's some of the grounding, getting into more the percussionist side of work. And the horn work I entered into around probably elementary school. I
Hmm.
got into initially playing clarinet first,
Hmm.
wanting to play sax, but there was none offered at the time, so a teacher gave me a clarinet. I started out on clarinet and eventually transitioned to alto clarinet in middle school, to alto sax, to flute, and then eventually playing alto through high school, and after that, primarily working between sax, flute, and clarinet, and then getting a tenor later years, and always dealt with bamboo flutes, making my own flutes and experimenting with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can hear that.
Yeah.
So initially, from what I've read, you were drawn to saxophone first, but couldn't get placed like in band with that instrument, so it became
Yeah.
clarinet. Was that kind of what was happening?
Yeah,
or-
in an urban city schools, they're limited with instrumentation you have.
Yep.
And sometimes you may only have 1 or 2 instruments that are available. And if you're coming in as a lower classman, the upperclassmen get advantage of it. So,
Yeah.
teacher put me on clarinet, and it was odd and different, but I greatly appreciate it because that's the foundation of all reeds.
Yeah.
And it's usually best that any woodwind player start on a clarinet first, rather than starting out saxophone. Because once you go to clarinet, you can go to any other reed in there, even double reeds. Even though double reed requires a different armature and things of that sort.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you heard something in the saxophone, but you started up through clarinet, which is a similar like mouthpiece
Yeah.
and fingering. And so what, at that time, you're middle school, yeah? Or
Yeah.
coming into high school through that zone.
Yeah, that's I transitioned to saxophone in middle school around let's say 8th grade.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's just a kid.
yeah, it's beautiful, man. It's again, it's a family vibe because in this path, my path has been a blessing because every teacher that came along has a major pivotal point in the development of a lot of artists in Baltimore City.
Mm.
And it just so happened that the middle school director had ties to my family by way of a church on my father's side, and ran a choir. So when she seen me come through, I didn't know who she was at first. I had to go back home and tell the family, "Oh yeah, we know who she is." And her family was notorious in the music and the choir and things. And so phenomenal, Mrs. Betty T. McLeod, who just retired from Baltimore City Public Schools, a teacher for almost 45 years,
Wow.
and great clinician and technician,
Mm.
and can take any child and turn them into something and give them hope and dreams.
And this was someone that you took lesson from or mentoring from, or what was your connection to your...
basically, she didn't really do private instruction, but she did guide us, and we was doing band. So we had concert band, we had jazz band,
Mm-hmm.
and with concert and jazz band, it was a wonderful experience. We were dealing with like 40, 50 musicians at a time, universal. And a lot of my colleagues, well, a few of my colleagues came through that, and then we all split some way in high school. Some went to school for the performing arts, whereas I went to Frederick Douglass Senior High School, which is one of the notorious schools known for music in Baltimore City Public Schools.
All right.
You know, historically.
Yeah.
And,
So then you're in high school.
Yeah.
You've spent some time.
Yeah.
Playing, and what are you thinking at that point? Because you're a young cat.
Yeah.
Late teens. Where do you see it going for you? Like, what keeps you hunkering down with your horn and putting in the work?
Music was a love and a passion, and despite all the negativity and things going on around that one can get caught up in the streets with, music was a way of peace and tranquility, and it's something I loved doing all along. So while maintaining through high school, man, getting deeper and deeper, peeling the onion. The band director there, never forget, Mr. David Burton, he gave me a real book, which at the time I learned what it was, but I had previously had a real book from years prior by way of a mentor of mine that gave me some sheet music to study from, which I didn't know what it was. So when I got to high school, he gave me a real book, and he didn't really break it down on how to really play across chord changes.
Yeah.
But it was all the songs in there. I was like, oh man, well I know this is on All Blues, or I know this is on My Favorite Things. I started singing. I'll take the melody and play along with the CDs or albums at the time or tape. And then eventually self-discovering and working with certain advanced players that was already ahead of me. We learned what chord changes was and how to play across chords and scales and get into a little bit of jazz harmony theory from that point, and then, which took me into the next level, segue after post-high school and going right into the world of playing. Eventually started going right into the scene and community and hooking up with different artists around the city.
So you went right out of high school, you're getting into combo playing.
Yeah, I started with the combo. I actually started in high school. We had a jazz combo. In high school, we had a concert band. We had a marching band. We had a jazz band, woodwind choir, vocal choir, and jazz combo. And we had a program called Music Careers, which was for music majors. So I majored in music in high school. Eventually that program kind of morphed and mutated and folded in the years to come. But now they have a new program there called RAMP, which is Recording Arts and Media Project, which is actually revigorating the program. And they still have an instrumental program there,
So who are you listening to then? So, you're 15, 16 through 18, high school, and then, were there albums or players or?
I listen to everything. I absorbed everything I could get my hands on.
You were just a cat that was
yeah.
Would you focus on horn players, or was it broader than that?
At that time, I would say it would be horn players. I didn't get into the broad perspective, really going in studying drummers or bassists or pianists and things like that until probably undergrad years. But there was piano players. It's just like the music just was. It was there.
Yeah.
So it's not like I was actually going into it from an academic standpoint, like I want to study this cat, and I was surrounded in music, so I heard it every day.
Yeah.
The train. It's funny because a lot of guys at the time, were bent on Alan Holdsworth and the fusion movement and Michael Breck and them, and, going into, oh man, this is some heavy stuff, this is out, this is where it's at. And I'm like, you think that's heavy? Then why don't we put on Meditations by Coltrane? Oh no, that's too out right there, that's too free, that's too out right there. I'm like, well, it's equivalently the same thing, even better, or going into Furrow and stuff like that. So, that shows the direction of a lot of players and where they're at, and the fun thing about coming through the 90s, man, we have, in the prime of teen years, like I said, we're dealing with the modern contemporary sound. We got the boom bap hip hop. We got hip hop being sampled from the Blue Note jazz albums. James Brown samples that was coming out the late 80s with a lot of the Public Enemy and stuff like that, and Bomb Squad and all them. And then you turn around and move into after New Jack Swing era, around 93, 94, we're getting down to the boom bap hip hop. And a lot of those albums like Black Moon and different albums like that, they coming out of them old Donald Byrd samples, Smith & Wesson's guys, and hearing all those different samples, and you reflect back to them albums like, oh man, this is already there. So it's funny when you practicing, and you got guys in the neighborhood or whatever like that, oh man, we all the friends, and you're in the house practicing, and, oh man, you practicing that jazz stuff. Little did they know the same stuff practicing, they don't even realize where the sample is coming from. And they hear the originals, it blows their mind, So it was a beautiful era, man, coming through the 90s and then the constant growth and development,
You loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful time, and then everything. Like I said, you're dealing with the modern and the old. You had the old timers that come back and show a little bit of the bebop stuff, and we had, like I said, a wealth of information to be surrounded by. I was talking to a colleague a couple weeks ago how, where the younger generation of players, and it's not to necessarily talk down on them, but they have a different approach and aesthetic of how to learn the music now, where they're not actually putting in that physicality of work. They have more availability now with media, such as YouTube. Whereas we didn't have no YouTube at the time. The internet was not even developed. It didn't develop till the late 90s. So we actually went to the libraries, took tapes and borrowed tapes and studied from tapes. Swapped out tapes, made copies of tapes, CDs, vinyl, whatever we get our hands on,
Our library in Minneapolis had a grand piano room
Mm-hmm.
that you could go in with music books or
Yeah.
another instrument. As they were aware of, that's in that era.
Yeah.
People were hungry for that.
Yeah.
And the library was the spot.
And it's like that in Baltimore. We have the Enid Pratt Library, Central Library. You can go up there now in the Fine Arts and get all kinds of scores.
Yeah.
So I would take time. And that's another fun part, too, where we would challenge ourselves musically by reading other types of music. And doesn't have to pertain necessarily to your instrument. Like you could take violin music or, tuba music or something and play it on your instrument without knowing what transposition was at the time.
Yeah.
And build your chops up like that, So that was the fun aspect of it, And like I said, coming out of high school, going right into the game, the playing field. I ran into a lot of players in the community and started working, playing real heavy. While at the time I attended my first higher school of learning, which was a actual trade technical school called Rex Technical Institute, studying electronic technology. And then while doing that by day and working by night, and in between, just gigging in between, and eventually getting into, and I've always been writing, so writing and composing as well.
Yeah.
Writing music out and self-teaching, the self-taught journey until I decided to finally say, okay, let's go to undergrad now and kind of settled in now, focused where I want to be at. Not that I wasn't focused before. It was, figuring out, navigating, and also dealing with the financial piece as well.
And also, like 18, 17, that's pretty young for someone to actually decide where they want to spend some college time.
Yeah.
And so you put some music playing time in until it felt right for you.
And it actually gave me professional experience. So I had upper hand already. The problem is with a lot of institutions now, even when I went to grad school, in years past, is that a lot of these kids don't understand professionalism as far as how to work as an artist, independently or whatever which direction you go, without academia. Academia teaches theory, and you have a lot of professors in there that are actual. Well, you have a percentage that are working artists, and you have a percentage that are veterans or retired artists, and then you have a percentage of failed artists who never achieved their dreams of being an artist or pushing their pursuing what they wanted to do, so they kind of take a negative turn in an approach of teaching you and kind of spreading toxicity to you.
Those are the bitter cats.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't matter what form, fashion, style, music, genre, whatever it is.
Yeah, that goes across all the arts, man. That's like writing, painting.
Yeah.
Those are truths.
Yeah.
So you entered into the college world, and then at that point, like with your playing and thinking about improvisation, which is the focus that we're interested in.
Right.
Where were you at with that? Like, what did improvisation mean to you, and how did you develop your voice through that?
Well, the thing is, I never really focused on. I mean, improvising was something I learned from a terminology standpoint in high school, dealing with jazz combo. But as far as doing it, I've been doing it forever. Just didn't know what it was. And, one of the things I teach my students now, my low elementary kids students, I teach after school as well as university. And I always, and then I deal with the grown adults when I meet various colleagues in the game. I said, can you remember the first time you ever picked up a trumpet or clarinet or saxophone and how it felt? And most guys can't remember that feeling. They became so entrapped into the nuances
Mm.
and just blowing your brains out, making noise, not knowing what you know how to do, fingering and figuring out notes, and or if you got music that you read, you go off the path of the music and play something else different. All that's improvising.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, the fun part of it. And we tend to get locked into a grid matrix, especially when we get into academia settings of improvising. And it tends to take away the spontaneity, the natural feel of it, and the creativity, you know. So dealing with the improvising, post high school, undergraduate years, it was something I wanted to do. It was something I liked doing. Then it's getting to now what we say language, syntax. So I knew that I wanted to get chops, let's say, stronger, or learn a vocabulary stronger. And there's only but so much you can do when you self-teach yourself. So that's when I chose the academic route to go in there and not just become a performer. I don't need a degree in performance. So I actually ended up taking a degree as far as undergrad called professional music, which I kind of pulled together my own major and extracted classes I want to take. And in that process, dealt with various instructors and getting into private instruction lessons with the bebop and things.
Was this graduate school then?
Undergrad.
Are you moving into? Okay,
Undergrad,
this
yeah.
is still
I went to Berkeley
undergrad.
College of Music for undergrad.
Okay.
Yeah, and very profound institution. All institutions have their pros and cons. It's a great foundation, a great school for technical advancement. To get your fundamentals in order. When it gets into the creative aspect, that's another story. Because it's aesthetically, they have a slogan where it's nothing conservatory about it, which in itself is not always accurate. It's a jazz conservatory. The foundation of harmony and things you learn in Berkeley is jazz. So it is really undermined as a conservatory, even though it's a college of music. But it has the top leading industry standard, when things you want to get into industry-wise and all around different degree programs to get into. So with that right there, while I was studying there with various professors and taking various classes, the improvisation was growing and developing with that, and the lessons getting into, the syntax language of bebop, learning more how to get across chord changes and all those different things like that, which I knew already, but getting into a deeper context.
Getting a
Yeah.
stronger
Yeah,
ability inside
yeah,
and maybe make that vocabulary part of your own
yeah.
syntax and language so that you're expressing. Yeah, I dig what
And
you're
then
saying.
that's when now I have a few instructors who, I remember one instructor I had named Ron Mahdi, who was a great bassist. And, he has in his first entry class, in we taught ensemble class, so we get together in ensemble. He would lay out a whole spreadsheet of players. He'll ask you, okay, who do you like to listen to right now? Okay, well then you need to know who they listen to. And he'll take you on a journey where your home assignment, your work will be going back, listen to these players who inspired. And that's a very beautiful assignment and a very beautiful way of discovering new information. Because everyone is coming from another source. Like we have a lot of us listen to Train, but Train was listening to John Gilmore. Johnny Hodges, he listened to a lot of people. A lot of people influence him. But we don't tend to look at the people who are influencing you. We get caught into that one person itself. So there's a lineage, it goes all the way back.
Well said, yeah.
Yeah.
So then, maybe jumping ahead a little bit to grad school.
Yeah.
And what did you want out of that experience for?
Well, grad school
yourself?
was going to the next round of obtaining a master's, of course, to be able to move fluently, career-wise, and also new language, new information. Now, again, as being inculturated in this music, I dealt with all idioms. In a household, wasn't just R&B and jazz played. I listened to world music. I had Sudanese music, Egyptian music, Khartoum. You hear Ethiopian music in my household, reggae, soca, calypso, you name it. I had the whole African diaspora in the continent, even some Asiatic music. So I was well diverse in hearing that and being brought up in that. So now it got to the point where I wanted to go deeper with that music and learn how to even play that music. And there's always been, key players in various cultural ethnicities that's around, and that are teaching private instruction through various mediums and systems. But ironically, it seemed that, I sit and question myself with a couple of colleagues recently. I said, man, what happened to, like, there was a time that you could find, like, maybe 20 oud players, so many Turkish guys, or doing, and then it seemed like after 9/11, everybody disappeared, due to no fault of their own. And when we talk about this music, we cannot have this music without the social political piece that come along with it. A lot of people love the music and love what great artists do, but they don't want to deal with the social politics come along with it. So the world music was something, I hate to use that term, world music. That's a broad term. It's just really ignorance, just like using jazz, But for lack of better terms for that, when we deal with those various music forms, getting into wanting to learn how to necessarily play a ney flute or oud or Chinese piper, something like that, or something indigenous,
I hear you.
And I'm already coming out of indigenous perspective with djembe and jun playing and Mande, Mali and Guinean style of music, and kunga out of Cuba, learning that right there. And now on a reed perspective, you hear guys like Yusef Lateef, Train, of course, and these different guys are taking these contexts and going eastern with the music, and now it's going to the next level. Like, not just about blowing your brains out on this raga or trying to interpret a raga in what we call jazz harmony. Let's actually learn what a raga is and learn how to play it and try to play the microtonal, quarter-tone system it is and get out that Western mindset, And that's where the grad school came in. And, of course, the great Wadada Leo Smith, who I studied with there, in his program that he had created called African American Improvisational Music. I began to study his syntax in his language called Unctuation, which is a language and graphic notated system that he developed. And I don't want to just limit it to graphic notation. It's a whole language that he's developed musically, taking out of the standard music notation. And it opened the realm up to give you a lot of creative ideas, a lot of new perceptions, new ideas to add on to what you have. And really, when you go to grad school, it's really to polish what you already have, add on more to your plate. And in the process of dealing with that as a major and studying that information, I also took Japanese gamelan as well. And because I always wanted to get into gamelan from self-discovering them one day on the radio, and took a little bit of everything. A little bit, you have a little bit of everything out there. Indian music, a little bit of everything. So you're kind of like in a nice area to get well developed in a lot of great music,
Yeah. Then I hear what you're saying on that. That's very broad-minded.
Yeah.
Which is, in a lot of ways, the opposite of what graduate school can be, which is a very focusing.
Well, that's why I chose
laser.
It was a
you
path
set
chose.
It up for yourself.
Yeah, because many of the grad programs I applied for a few, but as I began to really get into the core of it, it really was either you're going to be either classical or you're going to be jazz. There was no gray area in between. I mean, you had contemporary improv in NI, New England Conservatory. You had Wesleyan with their program. Just to name a few. Kyle Arts, of course. Didn't know about Bartlett in New York at the time. But there were institutions around where you can get into your avant-garde, or for the lack of better terms, or more free or experimental creative forms of music, breaking out of the straight traditional classical period of music, or, jazz. You had and so that right there was what I was looking for, and that's what I found. To give me the leeway to get into something without being restricted.
And then you moved into teaching.
Yes.
That's what you're doing now,
Yes.
As well as performing.
Yes.
And I was interested in some of the things you wrote about your perspective that you hinted on a little earlier about people being drawn into the gorgeousness of the music without wanting or taking part in the social, cultural angle. And I was wondering if it just put me in mind of wanting your reaction to a documentary by Ken Burns that was just called Jazz, I think.
Yes.
And then there's like a whole ton of Wynton Marsalis in it. I would love to just hear you riff on, with someone who knows or has dealt within sort of the historical context of of that, how you reacted to that film, because that kind
Well,
of
the book
rippled
and the
through.
films, it has a lot of controversy. It's a great chronological. The book is actually better than the film because the book gives you more detail.
Mm.
And he did a great job chronologically, to the best of his ability, of really documenting as far as back as he could go with the music and the evolution of Black American music, unto the present. It's just that it really could have went more in depth with dealing with more players than focusing primarily on Armstrong, Duke, and a few other people in the book. Other than that, it's a fairly good book to really deal with entry-level way of learning about the music. Now, when we get into the in-depth part of that system, or this music, cultural understanding of Black American music, missing on the jazz, we understand that it's coming out of the spirituals, the Negro spirituals in the field, and we're dealing with all that collaboration right there. As I teach my students in the university now, when most places you go, and I've seen and witnessed this, you're going to get it taught from two different perspectives. And you're going to deal with mostly a academic perspective of this romanticized idea that Europeans and Africans just came together, made love, kissed, held hands, and all of a sudden, boom, jazz begun. They don't want to deal with the in-between part, the transatlantic Holocaust, the transatlantic slave trade, the cultural differences with that right there. They don't want to deal with that part. A lot of people do that. And then you have the ones who do know that and do bring that into conversation and deal with that, and thus still continuing research on, with the Jolly Griots and the blues and things like that, just as an example, and a connection between the Americas to the islands and to the continent itself of Africa itself, So a lot of times we become so engulfed with the beauty of the music and forget about how the music development came about through the hardships and difficulties of people of America. We want to talk about blues and jazz and James Brown, but don't want to talk about civil rights, the unjust, the inhumanities to Africans in America, throughout post-slavery and things that's Reconstruction on to this point right there.
Now, when you say we don't want to talk about it, how are you experiencing that? Because, some people, that's an important part of what their perceptions are, and for
Right.
other people it's not, but I haven't run into too many where it's not.
Right.
But you're running into that, what, from college students, or?
Not really, but I have encountered it in the past, and you have this music now, has far been put into academic context, jazz, for the lack of better terms, institutionalized. And when we get into that, you have institutions where there's all white faculty and no African Americans or Black Americans in the faculty at all teaching this music. You have a faculty of guys who have never experienced playing blues, learn from a book how to play blues, and then adjudicate one applying for an application if you're applying as a student or as faculty members based on theory and books and not really dealing with the music, never played with the actual people dealing with the music in the club scene or whatever it may be, or experience this music.
So you're seeing, in the context of academia,
Yeah.
is when it...
That's one context.
That
yeah.
you ran into that more.
Yeah, and then you have also just in general playing, and various people have ran in various circles, that some people are ignorant due to the fact they just don't know. And then some hold on still to their own ideological ways of how they look at other unequal diversity, or, let's get down to the real of race relations. One being supreme over the other. And say, yeah, I love jazz music, but I'm not going to deal with a black person. I don't care about the black people in the ghetto. I just love this music. And I don't want to deal with the black people in the ghetto, not understanding how hip-hop even developed in the hoods, same like jazz and many other Black American forms on music in the islands as well, that context. And it becomes now a indifference of appropriation sometimes. And that goes for any form of music. I mean, I've had colleagues, it's the same thing for any one of us, even if we go into playing Asiatic systems of music. Any music. Oh man, it's cool. I like this, what they're doing on tablets, but I don't care about why they playing a rhythm, a tala a certain way or a raga a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
based on the way the sun is positioned in the sky, or
Mm-hmm.
based on a specific deity.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're dealing with Hindu. I don't care about that. I just like the beat. It
Mm-hmm.
just sounds good and sounds cool.
I
Yeah.
think that's a reasonable initial reaction
Right.
to art
Right.
because it's it may hit you on a much more visceral level. Like
Yeah.
if you hear Qawwali music and it can just light you up,
Right.
and you don't even know what's being said or
Right.
why. And it's interesting, like to have zero
Right.
information, but such a strong connection to what is happening just purely musically. I think maybe then cats might go in through the back door
Right.
and find out, well, what is it that makes this
Right.
tick, and what are they trying to say? I mean,
Right.
it's a timing thing for people too, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
It is. And some again. That's for those who are seeking the knowledge and information.
Mm-hmm.
There are those who clearly just eradicate that all away.
That's mental. I
Yeah.
can't believe that part.
It exists. There's
Really?
people who do not care or have any concern or knowledge or want to know the in-depth cultural language of music. It's just about it makes me feel good or it sounds cool and whatever it may be. And
That's surprising. But
everybody has their own methodologies how they operate in society. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's surprising to me.
Yeah.
And would be difficult to deal with.
I'll give you an example. That's like someone picking up a bata drum, and there's a lot of it gets into a gray area when we deal with the secular and traditional sacred forms of the music. You have a lot of drums, specifically when we deal with the drum. Drums used ritualistically for various ceremonies. And you have in the day and time now, a lot of people are attracted to the drum because it's cool to beat on and get in the drum circle and hit on. Buy a drum because it looks cool and sound good. You might have heard a record of Santana, somebody, just as an example, throw it out there.
Mm-hmm.
What a percussion player on there, whoever. And then when you buy a drum, you might have a person who's actually a practitioner, such as like dealing with Yoruba, Ifa, Santeria, or Palo, or whatever system coming out there as an example, or Arara, or Haitian Voodoo, and may hold these drums in a sacred form. And you come along and start banging on a drum out of context, it's disrespectful, and you're like, look, I'm buying a bata because I just like the sound of it. I don't care about what it's used for historically, how it's used, whatever like that. And you have a right to play whatever you want to play. You have a right to play a drum. You have a right to do that, but you should still know where the drum comes from, the history of it, and what it's used for, and understand its function. You will want to know.
That's what I would think that you would want to know.
Right.
I mean, I suppose there's some stuff you wouldn't want to know, but it's hard to imagine. But yeah, that's an interesting thing. So, where do you see so in your concert tonight? I did hear influences from spirituals.
Yes.
That even were quoted, and as a group, you're hearing that together and moving that and exploring within that.
Yes.
And I really, really dug that. To see a trio working together without, it's an interesting form of improvisation.
Yeah.
Like to hear something like that and then know how to react to it and what makes sense to bring. Yeah,
Right.
I really heard.
It comes with development of seasoning and listening. Understanding the in-between sound, there's silence. You have to know how to listen. A lot of times in various improvisational situations, it becomes what we call a circle jerk or a noise fest where everybody just focus on getting their particular musical orgasm off and not really worrying about creating music together as a group or listening to each other and really building up a layer or a vision or whatever like that. And there's times where, as an individual, you say, I want to get my shit off, for lack of better terms, or get my thing off and not care about nobody else, but you really want to work as a unit, not as an individualist, you know. And it comes with wisdom, age, and reasoning, you know, and discipline. Something you learn and obtain over years, you know. Because there's a lot of musicians, I call it, having diarrhea of the hands and mouth. You know, they just don't know when to keep quiet on the instrument. You know, they play too much. And it doesn't just happens in the, for the lack of better terms, experimental, avant-garde, creative world, free world. Even in the mainstream. You know, jazz players all the time. Look what I can do. They're playing all over. Okay, yeah, you play 1,000 notes. But is 1,000 notes going to impress a person, or is how you voice and phrase 1 or 2 notes that make more of an impact? Those 2 notes make more of an impact just as much as the 1,000 notes you play. But you learn it over time. You know, some don't get it, some do. You know,
The 1 or 2 notes I heard a lot from you, and it seemed like you focus on that as it's more supportive to the trio.
yes.
Does it feel like that to you when you're?
Well, the trio is a magical thing because you're dealing with a triad. So every time you add on a person or subtract, you're dealing with personality and spiritual energy and things transpire. As a trio, I have 2 things to play off. There's many things to deal with. An example would be rhythm. He has sound and tone in his drums, the way his drums are tuned, between his cymbal, each stroke, how he approaches the drum, how he plays and interprets the drum. Her voice, how she weaves and ebbs and flows and different things in her voice. So that's a wealth of vocabulary to interact with between those 2. And then bring my own into that by feeding off of those 2 and then adding my own interpretation to that without overpowering that. When you work with a vocalist, it's a very sacred thing because you can easily overpower a vocalist sometimes, especially as a horn player and a drummer. So when we listen to each other, knowing how to fall back and allow the vocals to have space. And how we all have moments, of sonic moments where we get strong and, you know, soft. Yeah.
Beautiful things can happen.
Yes.
And they certainly did tonight.
Yes.
I dug it quite a bit. So I'll just wrap it up and say, Jamal, thanks a lot for coming through.
Thank you.
Playing
Thank
here
you.
at the Khyber Pass. Yeah?
All right.
All right.
Hopefully I shall return in the near future with my Organix Trio.
Okay.
We just released a new album last year called Psalms of Baltimore. And we have our previous album released called Ancestral Communion, back in 2015.
Okay.
And ironically, we released that during the 50th anniversary celebration for the AACM,
Dig.
which we celebrated in D.C. that year, throughout the year. And there was a Capital Bop Jazz Festival when we debuted and released the album.
Well, be sure to let us know if you get back around this way. We'd love to host
Sure.
you here.
Sure, no problem.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Well, there we have it. This week, Khyber Pass podcast, bringing you improvisers that have come through the Khyber Pass Thursday night music series that focuses on bringing you the deepest cats we can. This week we had Jamal Moore as our interviewee, coming from Baltimore as part of a tour, playing for us and speaking with us about his work. I'd like to thank him for a great interview. The concert was Jamal Moore on saxophones, various flutes, percussion, Davu Seru on percussion, drum kit, and on vocal, Monkwe Ndozi, providing the ethereal. Thank you for tuning in. Next week we will have interview and performance from Milo Fine. Until then, this is Paul Metzger signing off. And thank you for listening.